They mocked her voice until the silence after her song scared them more than any sound. The winter gathering filled the square with noise, breath rising from mouths, boots scraping wood, laughter rolling easy among people who had known each other all their lives. It was meant to be a night of shared warmth, songs carried through cold air and faces lit by lantern glow, yet for her it felt like every other public moment, a test she was never meant to pass. She stood at the edge near the shadow of the barn, wrapped in a coat that had once belonged to someone else, hands tucked tight, trying to make herself smaller, though she already knew it would not help. She had lived in this town since childhood, worked its kitchens, cleaned its halls, helped raise its children when their mothers were tired, yet she remained unseen until it was time to be judged. The sheriff stood near the center, broad-shouldered, loud, confident. His voice carried weight because people had learned to let it. He scanned the small group of singers, and when his eyes landed on her he smiled, not with warmth but with amusement. The kind that invites others to join in. He spoke about tradition, about standards, about how some voices belonged and others did not. His words were casual, almost playful, yet they cut deep because they echoed what she had always been told in quieter ways, that she was too much or not enough, that her presence disrupted the picture they preferred. The crowd reacted as expected. Some laughed, some looked away, a few shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Silence often sided with power. She felt the familiar heat in her chest, the urge to step back, to disappear before she could be dismissed outright. But then came the sentence that settled it, the declaration that she had no place here, spoken clearly so no one could pretend it had not been said. It was not just about singing, it was about belonging, about who was allowed to be seen and heard in this town. She felt every eye on her, measuring her worth in a single glance. She thought of the years she had swallowed words, bit back songs, hummed alone while working late nights when no one listened. This moment felt like the final proof that the town had already decided her limits. The sheriff turned away, satisfied, believing the matter closed, believing authority had done its work. That was when she noticed the cowboy standing apart from the crowd, leaning against a post, hat low, eyes steady. He had not left, he had not spoken either. He simply watched as if he were waiting for something unseen to arrive. The cold bit harder, the lanterns flickered, and the space around her felt unbearably open. Yet beneath the humiliation something else stirred, a quiet take mixed with resolve. She did not move, she did not run, she stayed exactly where she was standing as the night held its breath, waiting for what would happen next. The moment stretched longer than anyone expected. After the sheriff turned away, certain matter was finished, the crowd began to shift, ready to move on. Warmer thoughts and louder voices, assuming she would fade back into the edges where she belonged. Yet the cowboy did not move with them. He straightened slowly, wood post creaking softly behind him, and for first time that night he stepped forward into the lantern light. His boots sounded deliberate against the ground, each step drawing attention without demanding it. People noticed not because he spoke but because his silence felt intentional. He walked past the sheriff without a glance, past the group of chosen singers, and stopped near small platform where music usually began. For a brief moment it seemed as though he might argue or challenge the words spoken moments before, but he did neither. Instead he turned back toward her, still standing alone where she had been left, and raised his hand, not high, not dramatic, just enough for her see. He removed his head and held it at his side, a gesture so simple unsettled the crowd more than words ever could. It suggested respect, it suggested space. The cowboy then stepped aside, leaving the center empty. The meaning took a moment to reach the others because it did not follow any rule. They knew he had not asked permission, he had not defended her publicly, he had simply made room and offered it to her without explanation. Murmurs rippled outward, confusion mixing with disbelief. Some thought it a joke, some thought it cruel, another set up for humiliation. Yet Cowboy remained still, eyes fixed on her alone, not urging, not retreating, simply waiting. The sheriff frowned, sensing control slip in a way he could not easily name, because nothing obvious had been defied, no order had been broken, no insult thrown back. Yet authority depends on response, and the cowboy had refused to give the expected one. For her the world narrowed, space between where she stood and where he had cleared the ground. Her heart pounded loud. Enough, she feared others could hear it. She felt exposed, unsure whether stepping forward would confirm every cruel thought spoken about her. Yet something in his posture grounded her. He did not look at her with pity or challenge, but with trust, as though he believed she would decide for herself. Whether she sang or walked away would be hers alone. The choice terrified her more than rejection ever had. She took one step, then stopped, the weight of the moment pressing down. She thought of how often her life had been shaped by what others allowed or denied. Now the path was open and no one was pushing her through it. The crowd watched, unsure whether to laugh again or remain silent. The cold seemed to pause, the lantern flames steadying as if the night itself leaned, and she realized then that Cowboy had not stepped back for her weakness but for her strength. He had placed her alone, not to isolate her but to let her stand unshadowed. She stood in the open space feeling the cold settle into her bones, yet her feet remained steady on the ground. The crowd blurred into a single presence, no longer faces but weight and breath and expectation. The lantern light warmed her skin just enough to remind her she was real, that she was here and not fading as she had so many times before. Her throat tightened, not from fear alone but from the years of holding back sounds meant to be released. She had sung before, always quietly, always when no one was listening, when walls and night were her only witnesses. Now the silence pressed close, waiting for her to fill it or break beneath it. She drew in a slow breath, letting it reach deep into her chest, and when she opened her mouth the first note came out unsure but honest. It wavered only for a moment before settling into something stronger, something rooted. The sound surprised even her because it carried weight shaped by years of endurance, not trained or polished but lived. The song held no performance tricks, no borrowed shine. It told of early mornings and tired hands, of lows carried without ceremony, of hope held small but stubborn. Each word rose from memory, from moments she had survived rather than escaped. The crowd shifted again, but this time not with laughter. Some leaned forward as if drawn by something familiar they had forgotten. Others felt their chests tighten, recognizing pieces of themselves hidden in her voice. The cold no longer felt sharp because warmth spread outward, not from the lanterns but from the sound itself. The sheriff stood still, his expression unreadable because authority had no answer for this kind of truth. The cowboy remained where he was, head lowered, not watching her but listening, as though the song mattered more than the singer being seen. She closed her eyes and let the next verse rise fuller, no longer cautious. Her voice carried strength shaped by restraint, released at last. It did not beg for approval, it did not apologize for existing, it simply was. And that was enough. The town heard more than a woman singing. They heard the weight of being overlooked and still standing. They heard dignity where they had expected shame. The space around her felt different now, no longer empty but held, as if the night itself supported her. When she reached the final line she did not rush it, she let it stretch, letting the last note linger until it faded naturally into the cold air. Silence followed, but it was not the same silence as before. It was full and heavy and changed. She opened her eyes and stood still, heart racing, breath unsteady, yet her posture calm. Whatever came next, she knew she had crossed something unseen and could not return to who she had been moments before.